coordinate these things is quite something. I think we're going to look back and laugh. So, let me start by just saying thank you to each and every one of you for being here. Welcome to the Tryst. Really, from my team and I to you, it is an honor and privilege to have you here. I think what happens with these types of instances is that it's been sent my way so that we can laugh about it later, and that we shall do. I think it represents everything that we've been trying to do here for the longest time. The journey over the last 18 months has been a hairy one. And so we embarked on this project probably unsuspectingly in May, and it's just been a bootstrapping session ever since. So really, the fact that you guys are here, this is our second go at this. If you remember, I think we were going to do this on the 24th of June, and then the fun police said we can't, and so here we are today. I just want to check in with our team. They've all disappeared. Good, we shall keep juggling. Pardon me? Did you pay to be here? Why are you complaining? I'm just kidding. Please give my father a round of applause. That's why I'm teasing him. So they tell you not to apologize for these things, but I'm going to make an apology once, and then I'm not going to do it again. It is an interesting thing trying to merge this world of in-person and digital, especially when we have literally forgotten how to run in person. I'm listening to all the guys behind there talking, all my friends, my speakers, and I'm hearing a conversation go like this. Dude, I'm totally out of my rhythm. Where's Gillan? I heard Gillan saying it. I'm prepping for tomorrow, bro. I'm going totally out of my mind. I feel like I'm totally lost. I'm hearing John say how nervous he is. I'm hearing Rich say, I have no clue what's going on. Of course, I'm just telling you these things to make myself feel better. My team inside of the studio, can you let me know what's going on there quickly? We're live? Oh, that's good. So, my job, so now at least I can welcome everybody else. Welcome to everybody watching. We kind of had to go live simply because Facebook has a little moment about it where if you go beyond 10 minutes when you've scheduled your live and you don't go live, the whole broadcast cuts, quite literally. I don't mind these learning curves. I think they're all part of it, and we really will laugh. So, from me to you, I really want to just say thank you so much. We've got a countdown timer. Are you basically telling me we're good to go? No, you're saying dance, monkey, dance. Well, luckily I do this for a living, so I can help you. Let me take you back a step while we wait for them, while we're all here. I want to just share a little bit of a story with you as to how we landed up here, because it's been quite a journey in our own right. I'm pretty sure if we had enough time to literally swap war stories over the last 18 months, we could be here for forever, right? You could describe all these crazy things that happen to people over time. But I want to share one with you in particular because I think it's relevant. So I'll never forget this moment. It was such a surreal moment. It was March 2020, and I just landed in London from South Africa. I'd had quite a successful 3 weeks in South Africa, and as I landed in South Africa, I opened up my inbox to about 10 emails, basically letting me know that all the work that had been in the pipeline for about 6 months, cheers, gone. You can preach all you want about how you think the future will work, which is part of my friends and I. This is what we do. We talk a lot about how to be prepared for the future. But you can talk about it all you want, but when it hits you and when it happens to you in that way, it is surreal, and this crazy human effect takes place where you go numb, you go frozen. Did it happen to any of you? I remember landing, it was early March, and all these gigs got cancelled. They had taken 6 to 9 months to plan, and in the middle of nowhere, cheers. And then I got this phone call from a friend of mine at British Airways, and he just politely let me know that you need to pick a country where you're going to be based from because the borders are going to close soon. And so I had been living in this utopian world where I was based in London, coming back to South Africa once a month for a week. I was living this flashy high life. I was getting onto 120 flights a year, and suddenly I had to pick. It was the weirdest thing. So I landed back in South Africa. The fun police put us into lockdown. And I think I did what everybody else did for about 3 weeks. I drank too much. It was highly, highly emotional. But at some point you realize like you can't do this forever. You have to pick up. The problem is your hands are tied behind your back. And again, I don't think I'm alone in any way, right? I'm pretty sure many of you would be able to relate to this. You kind of have been pulled into a gunfight with one arm behind your back. Now what? Well, I'll never forget the first thing besides getting over my 3-week hangover was, okay, we've got to get moving. And we set up a paid-for webinar with a laptop that looked up my nostrils, and we made 10 grand. 100 people paid 100 rand to attend a webinar. And I remember thinking to myself, we are dead. Like, I can't survive on. And it took me 2 solid weeks to get all 100 people to attend. So I was like, basically, I'm dead, and any lifestyle I ever had is gone. But it's the crazy thing about human beings is that even when we don't know what the fuck to do, there is something quite special about putting one foot in front of the other without knowing what the future will look like and just hoping for the best, learning along the way and making it happen. And it's a funny thing because when I look back at those images, and I'll say them for the second half of it, when I look back at those images today and the screen grab of me sitting at my friend Alton's house because our internet in Bryanston was broken and I had to break the law. This is something I'm going to tell my kids one day. I had to break the law to drive from Bryanston to Bedford View to keep myself alive, hoping the cops didn't stop me. And it's all, I haven't had a haircut in a few weeks, and we're hoping the internet works, and you've got this one camera angle. What a disaster. But my point is that it was quite surreal that by that one little webinar led to a second, led to a little studio being set up in WeWork because we thought this is so crap. Surely we have to improve this a little. And the thing that I would argue to most people is that we are not zoomed out. I mean, we are not Netflixed out. I got this from Rich. We are zoomed out because of the crap quality. And so again, without knowing how it works, we just set up these 2 little cameras, just like these 2. These old, not these now. These old broadcast cameras we set up at WeWork. We had no clue what we were doing, but we knew we could switch between 2 camera angles. People seemed to like it, and the craziest thing happened. 3 weeks into that, I got this phone call from Amazon Web Services via AdCorp saying, we want to put this webinar together and we'd like you to speak at it. That one Zoom meeting led to maybe what we need to do is actually turn it into a series. That series got sold. The first one, I think we had 3,000 or 4,000 people watch, with another 10,000 people watch the replay. And this thing built. That feeling, honestly, of not knowing how it's going to work, but putting one foot in front of the other, has probably been the gold standard lesson of COVID. In fact, I learned that up until this point, I had become soft because my life had been so good. For 5 years, I'd worked on building this international lifestyle where everything was highly tuned. I started to get to know the staff at Heathrow Airport in the same way as OR Tambo. And my life was great, but in the process, I'd become so soft as a human being. And if COVID taught me anything, is that you really have 2 choices in life. You either do very difficult things to toughen yourself up, or sometimes even through no fault of your own, a weird pandemic will come along your way and show you how brittle you are. I look back on those last 18 months, and I honestly think that they were by far the most painful of my adult life, and I also think they were the best thing that ever happened to me. And I don't say that lightly, and I don't say it for fluff. It's the God's honest truth. I wouldn't wish it upon anybody. It's the best thing that ever happened. So, that's a very long-winded way of telling you that tonight's comical errors are a tiny fraction of the pain that has happened, and it literally doesn't matter. Because my final point before we figure this out is this. I say final point a lot. Can you cast your mind back to when you were 10 years old? Do you remember that point? Or 12? Just pick an age before 13. I remember thinking that adults have their shit figured out. Do you ever remember that? I remember being 10 and looking at my parents and thinking, my goodness, they know how everything works. And looking at my uncle and thinking that he knows how everything works. It turns out he doesn't, by the way. I'm just kidding. But that's the thing. At 10, I thought that when I'm 37 years old now, so I thought that by the time 37 rolled around, by God, I was going to have it figured out. But pre, during, and post-COVID, what a beautiful lesson, if we could all grasp it, being that you never actually become the adult you thought you'd be at 10. That everybody literally is a child in this grown-up meat sack, and they are all just figuring it out. And the second you take this deep and annoying pressure off of yourself to know how everything works, and the fact that you forget that other people are exactly winging it just the way you are, maybe just with a bit more and a bit less experience, well, then life changes. And I think we saw that during COVID, right? You thought that the world systems knew what would happen. What do you do during this time? As a result, I thought I was coming back from London to South Africa for 7 weeks, and it's been 18 months. My stuff's still sitting in London. My friend Ricky, he moved to New Zealand. He's here. He moved to New Zealand in January 2020. His wife and child were 2 months from joining him. They just had to quickly finish moving the furniture and the final sale of the house. Those 2 months led to them missing the final call to get into New Zealand. He spent a year away from his family. He watched his 2-year-old turn 3-year-old on Zoom. But it's not all bad. Really, I think the overarching theme, if you take the last 18 months, is that when you start to finally appreciate that pain can be a precursor for growth, but only if you pick, life gets fascinating. And let me tell you, the 18 months post-COVID, post-March 2020, have been nothing but fascinating and nothing but growth. So ladies and gentlemen, I don't say this loosely, I just want to say thank you to each and every one of you for being part of this journey in some form. If you are here live, if you are watching this via Facebook or YouTube, thank you for being part of this. Please give everybody in the universe that's still alive a round of applause. So I just want to quickly check in with my team up there. Are we good to go? Oh, you should have stopped me like 10 minutes ago. You didn't wave hard enough. Okay, if you can please give me a hand, there is a, we'll actually play it afterwards. I ran down here without a clicker. Will you just, so, our first guest of the evening, my goal, by the way, was at 6:30 when we started, there was a video that was going to play, which we'll still play. And when it was played, I was literally going to talk for 90 seconds and do this introduction. But things changed. So ladies and gentlemen, I want you to do me a favor in welcoming John Sanei to the stage. John is my brother in arms. We have literally been down the gauntlet and everywhere in between for the last 6 years. He spoke at my second Suits and Sneakers on the 12th of November, 2015. We deleted that video upon John's request. Is that true? No, I'm just teasing. We have been everywhere around the world. He has helped me at every turn, and for that reason and more, when I was putting this launch together with my team, I genuinely thought we simply couldn't do this without John Sanei. So please help me give John a warm round of applause as he makes his way to stage.
Who are you going to be? Are you the innovator, the disruptor, or the activist? We are seeing a collapse in our everyday lives, chasing the ever-elusive goal of more. We sit in a state of transformation, paving a path into a new way of thinking, shifting not only our businesses, but our perspectives as well. That's my job, to enlighten, to help forge your future through reimaginative resilience. Our story doesn't need to be defined by our past, our family, nor our society. We have a choice to awaken our curiosity. So I ask you, who are you going to be?
Hi. It's both incredibly exciting to be with you tonight and incredibly frightening. I haven't been in front of a live, I can't even talk, in front of a live audience for 18 months, so really great to be here. And Mark, well done, and Nicole, well done, Nicola, for putting this together. I've put a brand new talk together tonight, which just adds even more nerves to my plate. And I realized that, when I work with organizations and companies, I can't often share everything I want to share. And so tonight I'm going to put a couple things that I can't usually share out there, and hopefully it makes a deep impact, because putting it together really helped me think about things differently. The talk tonight is all about comfort and our idea about comfort and how our society drives pretty much all intentions towards more comfort, more convenience, more seamlessness. In fact, it's one of the pillars that makes sales so strong. There's 3 pillars that consumers always make decisions about. The first one is this idea of hyper seamlessness, this idea that it can be as convenient as possible. And Eric Schmidt, the ex-chairman of Google, was interviewed about why he thought Zoom did so well over COVID-19. And he said, for one reason only: easy. Don't have to do anything except click one button, seamlessness. And that's seen Zoom become a giant business because of just one seamless ideology behind their consumering, rather than Skype or all the other ones that were a little bit more difficult to get into. The second one is hyper-personalization, and this idea that brands will know us better than we'll ever know ourselves. The best company right now that's doing this is Spotify. They follow a process called curate, match, and facilitate. They curate music, match it to you personally, and facilitate to you for $5 a month. I think this is the future of every business. Imagine holidays being suggested to you that Spotify does. Imagine dates or places to live or clothes, and this is all coming, and many of these brands are doing this. And the third one is trust. And the number one person we know right now that's developed so much trust around the world, that's exploded his company's valuation more than it's actually worth, is Elon Musk, because of the trust that he's created. But I'm here to talk about comfort. And comfort itself is really something, like I said, society drives itself towards. And this is what's made Zoom increase its sort of numbers by 2,900% since we started COVID-19. In fact, I'm sure there's many Zoom pilots sitting here right now. I definitely am a Zoom pilot. I spend more time on Zoom than I like to even think about. But also, we see lots of brands talking about the seamlessness, and many brands have made incredible success because of just seamlessness. This example here is Domino's Pizza, the world's worst pizza by a long shot, but one of the world's best performing brands on the New York Stock Exchange. In fact, even better than Amazon on the stock exchange. And because it's such a shit pizza, they've got to be really, really good at delivering the pizza. And that's their only game. They're all about getting the pizza to you as fast as possible, because they know that's really what people want, especially when you're drunk or high. Nobody here, but everybody on the outside. When you're drunk or high, all you want is a pizza. And so they created many different ways for you to get pizza. Drones, robots, autonomous vehicles, a whole bunch of different things. In fact, I think they're actually a tech company that happens to sell shit pizza, but they've done exceptionally well. But they've created this 10-second app. I don't know if you know it. It's got Three things it does. It knows your credit card details, it knows where you are with GPS coordinates, and it knows the pizza that you've bought most often from Domino's. So when you open the app, you have 10 seconds to press no. If you don't press no, it charges the pizza and delivers it to wherever you are. So next time you're drunk or high, all you have to do is, and hopefully a drone will deliver it to you. We also have, obviously, the behemoth of all behemoths, Amazon, who's already started testing this process of sending you 2 different boxes every week to your house. And it's just a test case, and the first box is things they think you want, and the second box is empty for the things they think you don't want, and you can send it back to them. At some places, in some suburbs, they have a hit rate of up to 70% of people accepting what's been suggested to them. So you don't even have to think about what you want, it actually gets suggested to you, just like Spotify. But this comfort's amazing in many different ways. But what it's done to us, unfortunately, it's got us to become addicted to certainty. Our whole society is set up to be addicted to certainty and addicted to comfort. In fact, we go out of our way to create as much comfort for ourselves as possible. And because of this drive towards addiction to certainty, what we have done is we've switched off our ability to reimagine what's possible. We are so keen to go back to where we were, back to some level of familiarity, back to our comfort zones, that we aren't even spending time of reimagining what could possibly be. I work with UNESCO's Future Literacy Program, and they have a trend, a name for this mega trend. They call it the poverty in reimagination. And they say the world's actually suffering from this poverty and reimagination because people are so desperate and anxious to get back to what they once knew, not actually spending the time to going to what we need to go. But I got some questions because I think this is what we need to think about as we're going through this transition, as Mark was speaking about for 30 seconds, 90 seconds, 15 minutes, about this idea that this has been the toughest time that I think many of us have had because we've had to deal with all the shit in our past, all the trauma that's come to the surface, and everything else that's going on around us with no certainty around us. And this has made a lot of us uncomfortable. But I got a few questions. What if seeking all this comfort is actually causing all the chaos? And what if seeking all this comfort is actually stopping us from wanting to change? And what does the world require from us today? Massive change. Not even little bits of change, but massive levels of change. What if seeking all this comfort is actually making us stress about the change before we've even started to change? Why? Because everything we drive towards is change, is comfort, is convenience, is this addiction to certainty. And what if this comfort is causing us so much issues that we just plonk onto the couch, because this is what most of us do, when we are stressed or anxious or uncertain, we become comfortable, and we call this comfortable. But I don't call this comfortable. I call this the tyranny of comfort. It's become a tyranny. It's actually become a problem. And most of us aren't evolving quick enough to keep up with this pace because all we've ever done is drive for more convenience and more comfort. If we think about how the world is evolving as far as business is concerned, and as far as the way we need to be setting up our businesses and how vastly different they need to become, we start to understand that this comfort is choking us. It's choking ourselves and our evolvements and the way our business structures are actually evolving into the future. The difference here is the difference between a complicated world and a complex one. And this is the world we come from, the 200 years of industrial revolution that was all about linear innovation. And we're moving in towards this quantum dynamic digital world that's all about disruption. There's vastly different scenarios. But let me break them down for you, because the complicated world is the world we are all very comfortable with and the world that we know very well. But it's not anything like the complex world. But let me break down the complicated world for you. The complicated world and the world we come from, and the world we come from has patterns that repeat themselves. That's why we could build 2, 3, 5-year plans, because patterns repeated themselves and we kind of knew what to expect. That's why we could use Excel spreadsheets, mathematics, and accounting to actually figure our way out of any problem we were, because we just need to extrapolate the past into the future and we were good to go. Also, this idea of a complicated world, because patterns are repeating themselves, automation becomes obvious. And when automation becomes obvious, it becomes commoditized and the price gets driven down. with many of our jobs, our degrees, and our businesses, we find a lot of commoditization happening. Why? Because everybody's got access to pretty much the same information. And lastly, and most importantly, in this world of complication, it's key for us to focus in on hyper-efficiency and economies of scale. Why? Because you're doing the same thing you did last year. You want to increase profit and drop costs. Excellent formula, has worked fantastically well for 200 years. But let's talk about the complex world that we're moving into. Because in the complex world that we're moving towards, what you have some patterns, but they don't repeat themselves. So you can't actually use accounting, Excel spreadsheets, and mathematics to work yourself out of these problems, and you also can't use automation, because there is no automation that's been created to actually solve any of these problems, because automation is great at pattern recognition, not about not having any patterns to follow. But the key difference between a complicated world and a complex one, and the foundations that change, are massive. Because in this new world that we're moving into, we need to be practicing something called economies of learning and robustness, not efficiency. And let me explain what those means. Economies of learning has two sort of ideas around it. The first one is, how do you quickly unlearn to relearn? That becomes a superpower in the future, economies of learning. How quickly can I unlearn to relearn, because that's how things are changing. The second thing, using machine learning and data points, how do we preempt what our customers want before they even know they want it? Utilizing, is God speaking to me?
No.
Mark, I can hear you on the mic. I hope you're not in the toilet. And robustness is exactly the opposite of efficiency. Robustness says, I need to express my business and products and services as widely as possible. Efficiency says, I'm only going to service one or two things and do it as efficiently as possible. Let me land this for you with an example. Do you remember when we used to travel a lot? And please God, we'll start traveling again soon. We used to get to the airport, we used to put our suitcase onto the conveyor belt, and our conveyor belt used to get our suitcase to us on the plane 99% of the time, utilizing a pattern repetition process that's highly automated and highly complicated. Have you ever seen videos of suitcases in the back of airports? I mean, it's a miracle they even get to us, but they do most of the time. And this is always based on pattern recognition, repeating it, bringing efficiencies to it, economies of scale, and all of this is really important and highly automated. So that's the conveyor belt and the luggage that you get on. That's the old world that we come from. But the world that we're moving into is not complicated, it's complex. And so as we take off and the plane gets into the air, now we're not in a complicated world anymore. Now we're in a very complex world. In other words, we have no idea what's going to happen to us when we're up in the air. We have no idea if a bird's going to fly into the engine, a pilot's going to die, a terrorist attack's going to happen, an operating system's going to go down. We have no idea. So what do? We build planes robustly. In other words, we have 4 engines when one is enough. We have 3 pilots when one is enough. We have 5 operating systems when one is enough. Why? We're built for complexity, not complications. We've built for robustness, not efficiency. The world we're moving into is much more a plane than it is a conveyor belt. And our comfort, our idea of convenience and certainty is keeping us on a conveyor belt and not moving us towards a plane. That's the first reason we need to snap out of this comfort. The second reason is a word that I'm sure you've learned a lot of, automation. And how it's going to be taking so many jobs and taking so many jobs away and all the sort of panic around automation. But the truth is, automation is a very simple idea if we really understand it. The first thing that automation does, it's always looking for repetition, which creates pattern recognition, which brings about more efficiencies. Every single job in this world right now has a layer to it that will be automated, if not the whole job itself. So slowly but surely, as automation gets better and better and better and cheaper and cheaper and cheaper, every single person here will be affected in some way. Sometimes in convenience, because that's what happens as a consumer. But as far as work is going on, it's going to affect all of us without even thinking twice about it. I'll share with you some of them. Customer service, chatbots, obvious one. We've already started seeing this. Chatbots are still stupid. Over the next few years, they're going to become really smart. Then we're going to get receptionists, also pretty much over before it's even started because you don't really need somebody up there in the front. You also have proofreading. Forget about proofreading. I don't know if you've seen this website. It's called AI Write, I think. And you put in a heading of any topic that you want an essay written about, anything. And it writes you an essay. Asks you how many words you want. You want it to be positive or negative. And you write it out. And if you copy and paste it and put it into Google, it's never been written before. Absolutely original AI written copy. I'm an author. My job's gone. So all jobs are going to be automated away. And of course, doctors, lawyers, accountants have already been hugely disrupted. But this is coming into every sort of area that we're working in. That's the second reason, that comfort is actually not a good thing. It's a tyranny of comfort. Third reason, I don't know if you know this guy. His name is Jeremy Rifkin. He's written a couple New York Times bestsellers, but his best one is called The Zero Marginal Cost Society. He is an economist that, I can't even find words. I'm so nervous around people. What's going on? How's it, guys? He advises Europe, China, and the EU. And not EU, Germany. EU, Germany, and China. Incredible guy. Mark put on a evening at, I don't know if you guys were there, at the casino, Monte Casino, where he showed the documentary called The Third Industrial Revolution. It's Jeremy Rifkin, where he talks about everything becoming free over time. Because once it's digitized, it gets repeated for almost free. That's what's called a zero marginal cost society. There's zero margin to keep creating things over and over and over. And already what we have is photos have become almost free. In fact, kind of free. You can take as many of them as you want and distribute them as far as you like, as many times as you like. Communication kind of become free. There's so many things that have become almost free. I mean, Spotify, $5 is almost free. YouTube, entertainment, education, all these things are all becoming free. Next, according to Jeremy Rifkin, is energy will become free. And everybody will go, what the hell are you talking about? How's that ever going to be possible? That's what we used to say about communication and photos and entertainment and music. But now they are. And the next thing after that, he says, is transportation will start becoming free. So the question we need to ask ourselves, is our comfort getting us ready for this world that we're moving towards? And the big thing for me is, in a world where anything digitized becomes virtually free, how do we determine value and what do we actually place our value on? That's a huge question, and I think making many people around the world panic, because what are we actually going to start valuing as we move into this new world? But before I tell you what we need to start valuing, I want to take us back to the agricultural times. And we're talking like 300-400 years ago, and maybe even 200-300 years ago, where in the agricultural times, the most important thing we could have as human beings was our ability to understand the soil, the seasons, and our brawn. And our idea that we were strong enough to do all these things around the farm. We used to work 16-hour days, and if we did really well, we could make some vegetables or fruit and actually go trade it in the marketplace. But then the Industrial Revolution arrived, and in the Industrial Revolution, it doesn't matter how well you knew the soil or understood the seasons or how strong you were, it was actually irrelevant, because what was really relevant in the Industrial Revolution was intelligence, logical, left brain, process-driven intelligence. This is what education did for us for 200 years or so, developed this side of our brain more than anything else. But as we move into this new world, and I've shown you pretty well that all automation will take care of this almost like linear type of innovation and logical thinking. That's all been taken care of. And what we need to start thinking about in this quantum age is something brand new that many of us don't even think about often in our world, but this is intuition. And so this intuition idea is kind of like airy because nobody really knows what it really is. And so I wanted to break down what I think intuition is and why I think it becomes the superpower as we start moving into this world that we're moving into. So what is intuition? Some people call it purpose, because purpose and intuition are kind of well combined. But also, added to that, some people call it adaptable quotient. Our adaptability in the process of all this change is brought about not by logical thinking, but by intuition, because intuition makes you flow and makes you much more as part of a symbiosis of a process, whereas logical left-brain thinking is just go into a straight line. There's no option for symbiosis. So this idea of adaptability quotient, for me, is made up of 3 different words. And this comes from Singularity University and Amin Tufani, who's a colleague of mine. And I watched a talk with him, and he was explaining the process of adaptability, and it really landed for me, and I thought it was really important for me to share it. What is intuition? And intuition is made up of 3 things. The first one is perception, the second one is conception, and the third one is action. Now, the point of these 3 things, and I'm going to break them down for you, is the quicker you can perceive, conceive, and act, the stronger you'll become. The quicker you can have this machine cooking inside, and you can let go of the past and create new in an adaptable, symbiotic way with so much change coming, you're going to win. But if you're stuck to old ideas, you're going to take a lot of strain. So let's unpack perception. And I've written extensively about these topics in a couple of my books, but I think they're important to go back into. And the first idea around perception is wisdom. And wisdom, for me, is about moving from unconscious memories to conscious memories. In other words, we have memories with no triggers. You can go through life not being triggered. Anybody here being triggered in the last week? Most of us. We all get triggered. You know what those triggers are? Something from the past that tweaked. So you're like, I told you this was going to happen. I knew this was going to be the case. Typical man. You like that one, ladies? We all go through this. But these are just triggers from our past. And so wisdom gets us to let go of anything that was painful, to be able to heal all that stuff that's from our past. And you can't perceive cleanly if you're carrying all your bullshit from the past. And I know this from myself. I have a tumultuous relationship with my real dad. And I had to go through a whole process of letting go of that type of man as that type of alpha, as that type of person that I always expected all men to be. And I had to go through a process of forgiving him to change the type of men that were around me. I'm not gay, but I'm just saying men, as in business owners or business partners or people around me. I always had abusive alpha males around me. And it was because I was holding on this grudge against my dad. But I had to go through my own process, and I still go through a lot of processes to let go of all of my past and all of the irritations that I carry with me. Because remember, the more familiar your past is, the more predictable your future becomes. So if you're wise, your past gets clean and your future becomes totally fresh, and you can look at it with totally fresh eyes. So that's perception's first idea of letting go of the past. The second one is curiosity and imagination. Again, I've written extensively about curiosity because curiosity comes from here. It doesn't come from here. There's a different sort of ideology around it. And so this concept of curiosity, best described by Walt Disney, and he has created a legacy in a business that's doing incredible things. And one of their highest values is this idea of curiosity. Have you guys seen the latest hotel they've got now? You can check into a spaceship from Star Wars for 3 days. You check in and you're in that whole starship scenario for 3 days, a transformational experience. And this is Walt Disney doing things that are incredible, all based on their curiosity and keeping it adaptable, moving from movies to experiences to products to all sorts of different things. And then we get imagination. But as far as imagination is concerned, I don't want to talk about bullshit sitting there, meditating, thinking. I want to talk about something that's real and something that we need to be speaking about much more in these sort of places. And this is from Terence McKenna. And if you know who Terence McKenna is, you'll know exactly where this is going. Because imagination needs to be tweaked. We need to add newness to it. We need to add more intelligence to it. And Terence McKenna is actually Sean McKenna's uncle. I don't know if you guys know Sean McKenna. No, I'm kidding. He's not his uncle. But Terence McKenna said something really, really deep for me. And I follow a lot of Terence McKenna's work. He did a lot of psychedelics. And we're starting to see that psychedelics are starting to come back into society, not as drugs, but as healing teachers. And we don't speak about it enough. And so what he says in this quote, which I thought was just profound, he says, psychedelics are illegal not because a loving government is concerned that you may jump out of a third-story building. Psychedelics are illegal because they dissolve opinion structures and culturally lay down models of behavior and information processing. They open you up to the possibility that everything you know is wrong. Now, this is Terence McKenna. You might think it's way out there, it's on the fringes and on the left field, but I'm going to show you a 1-minute video from Bloomberg. Bloomberg. You all know Bloomberg? Bloomberg? Watch this video.
Psychedelic drugs are commonly reported to trigger life-altering, mind-expanding inward journeys. But since being scheduled dangerous and illegal, any therapeutic benefits have gone largely unrecognized. Mental health treatment hasn't changed in generations, limited primarily to psychotherapy and a broad drug class called SSRIs, or selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors.
So there's been no new drug in psychiatry essentially since SSRIs back in the 1980s.
These drugs have varying results, often with side effects, and can be seriously habit-forming.
Once you get on one SSRI, they've got you for life pretty much.
But this model could soon be disrupted by the acceptance of psychedelics by the medical, psychiatric, and pharmacological communities.
this is now coming at the forefront after spending 60 years in hiding.
60 years in hiding. We haven't evolved any psychiatry for 40 years in a world that's evolving second to none. We're still using the crap that pharmaceutical companies are putting into those things, not even looking towards nature to evolve, to expand, to reimagine. I wrote extensively about ayahuasca in my first book, and if you don't know what that is, I highly recommend you take a look at it. We need to start normalizing wearing tracksuit pants to big events, and we need to start normalizing looking at psychedelics for healing purposes and creating more imagination, because what we have is a framing problem in this world. We have a huge issue about people framing things incorrectly. And if you don't able to step out of your perspective, step out of the way you think about things, how are you ever going to be changing? How do we ever evolve when we're not taking something drastic to be able to help us evolve? The second part is conception, because once we've perceived cleanly, remember wisdom, curiosity with our hearts, not our logical minds, and we've been able to be imaginative beyond the expected realms of what we think is normal, we then now can actually ingest and frame what has come in. And this ingesting and framing is really quite quick because you've brought in all those new inputs with such fresh eyes. But I was listening to an interview by Kenneth Cukier, who wrote this book. And Kenneth Cukier is the editor of The Economist. And he's written this whole book about framing and how we have a framing problem in the world. And he said one thing in the interview that just hit me in the gut. And he said, imagine if we could reframe the relationship between China and America and what that would mean to the world and the human race. And so what we have in the world right now, unfortunately, and no offense to anybody sitting in the audience, is a bunch of old men still competing, still fighting, still killing each other, still framing the world through scarcity. Imagine we could reframe things. Now, if we don't bring anything new in, how do we reframe anything? And we need to take on this responsibility in our individual capacity, because the more angst we bring into the world, the more angst there is in the world. And so this framing issue becomes obvious when you're perceiving through curiosity and fresh eyes. And lastly, when we get to the point of action, and this idea of action becomes seamless and energized when you are bringing this information in this way. And this process for me is all about entrepreneurship and experimentation. And I think we've arrived at something I'm calling the era of forced entrepreneurship. And the reason for this is that your degree doesn't guarantee you anything anymore. The fact that you've worked long in a company doesn't guarantee you anything anymore. Your skin color doesn't guarantee you anything anymore. Your gender, nothing guarantees you anything. The only thing that guarantees you something is you, your head, and solving problems. Because no job can guarantee you anything anymore. So this era of forced entrepreneurship is not about having your own business. Don't think about it like that. Think about it in the way entrepreneurs utilize their thinking and what they do with it. Because there's three things an entrepreneur does, whether they're in an organization or not. They do three things. One, they solve new problems with no loss of enthusiasm, knowing that their reward is a bigger problem. This is Carol Dweck's work around growth mindset. This is Nassim Taleb's work around anti-fragility. This is all this idea that we should be wired for the challenge, not the solution. We should be wired for discomfort, not looking for comfort. And so this idea of experimentation also is key in this process of transformation. We haven't arrived anywhere yet. We are still deep in this transformation around COVID, and we have to be going through a process of experimenting. But if we are focused on convenience, or focused on comfort, focused on addicted to certainty, we can never experiment. And I know this year, myself, I have spent an exorbitant amount of money experimenting with different things, just trying new things out to see which one sticks and which one doesn't. And I don't think we're out of the sort of period of time to stop experimenting. This is the time for us to be applying ourselves in an entrepreneurial mindset with the ability to experiment. So the quicker we can perceive, conceive, and act, the better we're going to be for the world, the better we're going to add value to the world. And so this, for me, is intuition. When you're able to apply yourself on this process, you become adaptable, you become flexible, and you become optimistic, which is something all of us could do with more of. And all transformations always start off with the sad. And here we are today in a world that's very sad, There's a lot of trauma, mass trauma around the world, and we need to become okay with the sadness. I'm not going to plug my new book that comes out in 2 months, but I write a whole piece of it, a big piece of it in the front about sadness, that it's important for us to courageously be sorrowful. It's important for us to positively disintegrate so we can have post-traumatic growth. But right now, the world isn't sad. And as we start coming out of the sadness, we don't go back into any normality. We actually move into a place that's going to be incredibly strange because nothing will be like it was. And everything will start becoming new. Have you all heard of the NFT digital piece of art sold for $67 million? Tell me that's not strange. That's strange? Now there's this new money called Bitcoin. Not strange? So many strange things. And this is just going to evolve into more strangeness. And then eventually we'll arrive at the adventure. But I think we're years away still. And I don't mean to be pessimistic, but I think anything new requires major death, major implosion. And we need to have lots of structures to be sort of bedded down for newness to start to arrive. So the point of my talk today was, please, don't seek comfort. Try with utmost effort to seek discomfort. Thank you for your attention.
Please give John another round of applause for me. Again, guys, thank you so much for your patience and for being part of it. John, thank you so much for always being so open. What I want to do is, because we've got the pictures in this order, I'm going to run through this very quickly and we're going to take a 10-minute break. And when we come out of the 10-minute break, we will jump straight into Rich Mulholland. So, being that we did this a little back to front, I don't know how it worked for you guys, but this was the email I woke up to in London, for those of you who are just joining. I'll never forget, this was one of 10, basically telling me, I'm sorry, we have to maneuver you along. So you do what any person would do after that. You go buy 20 grand's worth of booze at Macro, that was some of it, and you set yourself up for a little bit. But at some point, you can't keep doing that in a COVID world. You have to pick up. So we ran a webinar. Even with our comical errors, it doesn't look as bad as that. But that was the start, really. I remember us putting one foot in front of the other. We set up our tiny little studio in WeWork. That's what it looked like. We really just used their framework, so to speak. And the beauty of WeWork is that we could be in there when we needed to and leave when we needed to, so we didn't have to sign long-term leases, etc. It really had its part. The problem with it is that you couldn't customize the space. You couldn't do what we've done today. But again, I just got into this flow where I would interview anybody that would come along. And the more we did these interviews and put them out, the more people started to give me a call. Why are we laughing? Okay. We've got some audience laughing at us. But here's the thing, I'll never forget getting to the end of the year, realizing London is no more. Because the London I left in the beginning of 2020 wasn't the London that was existing in October last year. I remember having to make that mental and emotional decision to stay in South Africa. It was a weird thing leaving a place emotionally and then coming back. And the whole time thinking, next month when the borders open, I'll go there. Or when things return to normal. But it just didn't work out that way. And in the beginning of the year, I made this decision to stay in South Africa. I found a place in Bryanston, and I started looking for properties. And wouldn't you know it, one day, in a twist of fate, on Property 24, I found this place at 8 o'clock at night, and I remember writing to Mitch, he's here. And I was like, I'm sorry that I've written to you so late, but is there any gap that I can come see this property tomorrow morning? I'm traveling for work, which was quite a big thing at the time. So long story short, Mitch responds to me that night. We come here the next morning. Now keep in mind, in my head, I'm thinking we're looking for like 200 square meters. If we could just find, this space is about 40 square meters. If we could just find something that's about quadruple the size, something that we can customize. But the second I walked in here that morning, I'll never forget walking in here with you. It was somewhere in the beginning of March. I came down the stairs here and I saw this open space. I saw the triple volume ceilings, and it hit me like a 10-ton freight truck of what this place could be. And so really, if for nothing else, the story of the Tryst is a story of revival. Because when everything that you love is taken away from you from no fault of your own, it does something to you. It changes you. And so here's the point. I will never forget last year, April, when I had recovered from the haze. I remember saying to myself, I swear to God, when we get to host events again in person, when we get to see people again, when we get to return to some sense of connection and intimacy as people, I will never forget it. I will never take it for granted. So it's a funny thing how life works out. I showed a few friends here. One of them who's in the audience tonight jumped on board with me. I'm going to speak about Nicola in a little bit. But between it together, we came through and we decided to take on this building. And I was looking for a name. It's like, what do we call this thing? And so the word that kept coming back to me over and over was not only about revival, it was about connection, coming back. I know it's such a common phrase, but when it matters so much to you, you'll do anything to have it back. So I went onto Google and I was looking for all these different synonyms of collaboration, connection, etc. And I found this word called Tryst. You enter into a tryst with people. And it has a slightly different definition in that it is a secret rendezvous between lovers. And when I told Nix about it, she was like, not a sausage, are we calling it the Tryst? But here's how I sold her, and I want to sell you today. Because last year, when everything felt lost, and I'm not trying to over-dramatize it, I remember that hole. I, like so many other people, because I couldn't see the light at the end of the tunnel, I just felt fucked. I just felt like there was no way back. And I would call different people in my life, and I would just be down for those 2 or 3 months. But as you start to put one foot in front of the other, and as we got a shot to come back to this revival, I remember making a promise to myself that when we get back, should anything happen, we will create with love. We will create with passion. Me, when I found that word, Tryst, this idea that I promise anybody who comes into the space and creates, we will never create another event just for the sake of it. There is no such thing as an event that we put together here just to tick the boxes. Because for once, when something is taken away from you and you get it back, you will appreciate it and love it like never before. And so the Tryst is quite literally that. It is a space where people who are passionate, who give a fuck, who care about the world, who want to make a difference, who want to add value. It's a space for those people who come together. And so anybody who stands on this stage and speaks to an audience enters into a tryst with that audience that they will create with love, that they will create with romance and passion. So for us, myself, Steph, Nicola, the team, Mark, Matt, Sue, Des, Avril, Eddie, I cannot say thank you enough for being part of this revival. We're going to go into a 10-minute break on both ends here live and on the live stream. We are literally setting the timer. We'll see you then. Thanks for being part of it. Welcome to the Tryst. Alrighty, guys, welcome back. To those of you at home joining us, welcome back. We are literally just waiting for our audience to be seated. So, you'll often hear that saying, which I'm going to bastardize to death, around if you are the smartest person in the room, you are in the wrong room. And I think when you're younger, for obvious reasons, you always think you know everything. Then you get a little bit older, you realize you know a little bit less, and as you kind of get into your 30s, if you're lucky enough, you realize you know absolutely zero. And then on top of that, what tends to happen is you meet some people who make you feel like you're about -2 years old. So this is one of the things that happened to me a few years ago when I met Rich. Because every time I get talking to Rich, I put an idea forward, and he'll say, no, it's cool, but I thought about it like this. And then he offloads his thought pattern, and then you're like, Fuck, that makes so much sense. I don't know why I didn't see it like that. I thought it was just going to happen the first once or twice, if I'm honest, but it kept happening over and over. And so as fate would have it, in 2017, the stars aligned where we got this gap to finally work together. I asked Rich to be part of Suits and Sneakers 5, if I remember correctly. And without going too much into the detail, we ran this event at the Sandton Convention Center. We had just short of 4,000 people. Rich closed off the evening, and it literally was magic. And so ever since then, we've been in this back and forward, beautiful relationship where we are friends, we are co-speakers, but I'm so fortunate to be in the position where I also get to learn so much from a person who thinks so critically, but almost contrarian at the same time, with loads of logic in a way that makes you think you're dumb. So ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, please help me welcome Rich Mulholland to the stage.
That was a abs at best clap, as claps go. Pretty shit. I know I don't have a video like John. Now I know what you guys take. You need a video. It's bullshit, frankly. Hello, everybody. Thank you very much. As I mentioned, don't have a video. I feel quite bummed about that. When I saw it, I was like, that's a great video. Totally need one of those. Do not have one of those. I also realized that John said, I'm not going to punt my book that's going to come out in 2 months. I'm completely intending on punting my book that comes out in 2 months. However, the stars did align in something John said and something I said. When he turned around and said, I'm crapping myself, I was like, dude, yes, I am cocking myself for this right now. But it feels great, and I'm really, really happy to be with you. So thank you so much for allowing me to share some of your attention today and for coming out and braving disease and death to be here with me. And for those of you at home, why would you be online watching a live stream at this time of the night? But thank you nonetheless. I really, really appreciate that. So thanks very much. But this talk, like the great books and movies, is a bit of a three-act affair today. In Act 1, what I want to do is share with you an experience that I had, a crisis that I was going through that I think that some of you will resonate with today. Then what I want to do in Act 2, I want to share with you the weapon that I used to overcome this crisis, but also other wars with willpower that I'd been in the years following. And finally, in Act 3, I'm going to challenge you. Each and every one of you, I'm going to challenge you to pick up that weapon and to use it in a quest of your own. So, I can't guarantee you, and I cannot promise, yes, safety first, good mask use. You guys are nice. You're like, this bullshit, we're not taking off. What are you people? What's wrong with you? Respect, thank you, good, good, good. Anyway, so, that aside, I cannot guarantee that this talk is going to be for everybody. But I can say that if ever you have felt completely beaten down by your own willpower, if ever you felt that you wanted to achieve something, but you failed to and you let yourself down, well, then I think that there'll be something in here for you tonight. So let's begin. I want to take you back to the day that Mark mentioned a few minutes ago. It was the 25th of May in 2017. And I'd woken up that morning getting ready to take to the stage at Suits and Sneakers 5. An event with nearly 4,000 people where I had the privilege of sharing the stage with John and with Mark and with many other amazing speakers to an audience of nearly 4,000 people. And I woke up that morning in a friend's house in Four Ways. It was a beautiful Johannesburg winter's day. And I got up and I reached out into my bag. And I know that Mark likes you to dress smarter and to show up a little bit. I forgot. And I went to grab this shirt. And as I went and I started buttoning up my shirt and I got to that kind of one and I couldn't close it. And my first thought was, it shrunk. And then my second thought, because I realized the ampersand, the at sign of the logo, I was like, oh, that's me. Okay, that's what he did there. And I realized I'd become too fat to fit into my shirt. And I was devastated. I was mortified. I didn't know what I was doing. I was like, how can I go out on stage and face this? And I was close to tears, and I phoned Jazz, my wife, and I said, love, I actually don't think I can do this. Like, I feel so humiliated. And I'd been, by the way, it wasn't like this was a real surprise. I had on the fridge the date of this sticking for weeks to remind me, like, you got to get into shape for this. You got to do it. I knew it was coming. I knew I would feel this way, but I couldn't get in control. And on this day, I phoned her and I said, love, I don't think I can do this. And she said, listen, nobody there is coming to see you because you're some fancy model, right? So you're off the hook in that regard. They're coming to see you because you have something interesting to say. And that's what you got to do. And you got to, take a cement pill, harden up, and go to work. And you know what? Just go and treat yourself to a new shirt. Find a better shirt, put it on there, and go out on stage and do what it is you do. Get to work. So that's what I did. I went over to the Superdry store in Nicola, and I bought a shirt. And for the first time in my life, and this is a medium for reference, for the first time in my life, I went onto stage that day in a double XL shirt. A double XL shirt. I think I look older there. I know I'm grayer now, but and I got out and I delivered a talk. And that talk, if you watch any part of it now, you will see that it was a talk of emotion. But that emotion wasn't emotion that was derived from the content. It was emotion that was derived from the inner pain and struggle and humiliation I felt from getting on this stage that day in front of people like you. I was mortified. And what made me even worse was, of all the talks in my life that were going to get picked up by an organization like Goalcast and viewed 20 million times, this was not the one I wanted. Right? This was like this cosmic bitch slap, like, haha. And yes, I think they thought that I was working at the top, but I felt like I was at rock bottom. Well, almost rock bottom. Because a few months later, in November that year, I was invited to speak at yet another high-profile event with, and a lot of people there as well. This event was the BCX Disrupt Summit, and I was going to be sharing the stage with people like will.i.am and Malcolm Gladwell. The diet did not go well, as you can see. They said, I remember that episode of Friends where they said, the camera adds 20 pounds. There was a lot of cameras on me on that day. And I remember getting off the stage that day, and a guy called Toby Shepshak walked up to me, bless him, and he said to me, Rich, amazing talk. Dude, you got so fat. And I know that that's an unpopular thing to do nowadays because we're all supposed to be body positive and all bodies are beautiful. I'm calling bullshit on that right now because I was in pain, right? And you know what I learned from Toby Shepshak that day? That a good friend will tell you when you've lost weight. But a great friend will tell you when you've gained it, right? Because I needed somebody to tell me. Because now whenever anybody came up to me the next year and said, dude, you've lost weight. It's like, you thought I was fat last time I saw you and you didn't tell me, right? But that's what it took. It took me to realize this is a thing. And luckily, I was kind of okay. And my wife always said to me, you're beautiful to me. I think my wife has this habit of saying, you're the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. And she even said it then. And I know, I think she means it, but I certainly didn't feel it. And the kids gave me a cute new nickname, which I kind of liked as well. That was Fat Daddy. So I was like, hey, Fat Daddy. Hey, it's Fat Daddy. And so life was good. And in the end, after that, we took some time. We went away on a family holiday. And we went off to Glasgow, Scotland, where I'm from. And it was on this holiday, and you can see there, I certainly didn't avoid any of the deep-fried Mars bars on that trip either. But it was here that everything kind of changed for me. And it was like a moment where something happened. And I don't know, maybe it's because there I am standing in front of my childhood home with my family and my children. But something happened that day, and I came to this realization. And I think some of you will have had this realization already. And the realization is that we live two lives. Your first life is when you're young and you're carefree and you're just focused on living. And death isn't even a thing. You don't consider death. It's not something, it's not a concept you think about. Until one day. And one day, for me, on this trip in December of 2017, I woke up and I realized that I'm dying, right? I understood that I'm on the other side. And I started thinking about my life decisions and started thinking that I'm now in a second part of my life. A life in which I realize that I am immortal, this is going to end. And I think some of you here possibly will resonate with this, that you find yourself in that second life as well. You go to bed at night, you put your head on the pillow, and you start thinking about, what did I achieve today? Am I actually doing something? And you know this happens because people go on these quests. They start climbing mountains in their 50s and doing things they never would have done because they realize, I'm running out of time. And that was a big deal for me, and that happened for me there. And I realized that I no longer wanted to be the guy that was living just to die, right? I didn't want to be happy being the person that was living to die. I wanted to be dying to be living happy. I wanted to change things around. Now, why am I telling you this? Because if this was just a story that mattered to me, it wouldn't be important. But it's not. This is a story about you. It's a story about all of you here, right? Because each and every one of you are living in this story in which maybe you've let yourself down. You're living a story in which maybe some of the habits that you hoped you would have, you've lost. You're living in a story in which certain things that could have made you happy have failed to see fruition. And you're living in a story in which maybe the war on willpower has been lost, and you're finding yourself not as happy as you could be. And I think you deserve better than that. And I felt I deserved better than that. Now, speaking of happiness, in a video I created recently on my YouTube channel, you're welcome to subscribe. My YouTube channel, if ever you need a private moment just to be alone, go to my YouTube channel. There's nobody else there. It's basically just me and videos like, hey guys, pick me, watch me. But I did a video recently on why I'm always so happy, because I do think that I'm a pretty happy guy. And I realized something. I'm happy because I have understood this concept of recreational obsession. I'm happy because I realize that the best part of my day happens when my work stops. And I speak to people all the time, successful entrepreneurs. And these entrepreneurs, they'll say, at the end of my day, I'm so tired, I just want to get home and switch off. But I don't want to switch off when I get home. When I get home, I want to switch on. I want to become alive. I don't want to Netflix and chill. I want to do meaningful things. I want to use the best part of my brain for the best part of my day. And I believe where that happens is in these recreational obsessions, more commonly referred to as hobbies. I have my hobbies. I have various ones. I want to ride my electric skateboards. I want to go riding my motorcycles. And most importantly, for me, I want to play board games. I want to go out and play games, and I think that I deserve them. But I think you do too. You see, I think we've got to find that joy again in our life that we had as teenagers. We've got to find that thing that we were willing to do when we were younger that made us so happy back then, and we've got to reintroduce it into our lives. I think we've got to find those things that maybe we decided that we don't have time for today, because everybody doesn't have time for things. But of course we do. We just don't make time for things. And I think we've got to start making times for better things. I think the best part of your day should absolutely be the end of it. And I believe that you deserve this joy. And you deserve it right now. And as a kind of side note to this talk, I want to implore you to reignite some of the passions of the hobbies you had when you were younger. To find other things to engage with that will bring you alive. Now, the reason I'm telling you this from my side though, it was within this hobby that I found my way again. It was in this hobby combined with this idea of being in my second life that I realized that, hey, I think I've codified what I have to do to get out of this slump. So, the hobby I'm talking to in this case was my board game collection, my board gaming in general. So these are my board games. It's pretty nerdy, I know, to have a collection like that. I didn't arrange them like that. My wife said, if you want those stupid games in our house, I'm making them look pretty. It makes it a nightmare to find anything, but they're in a nice, pretty order. And I must say, I do agree with her, it looks better. Now, what I realized in these games is when I'm playing them, it doesn't matter how complicated they are. If it was a simple game like Untitled or a complicated game like Twilight Struggle, I realized that the way I would teach it to each and every one of you, and by the way, if ever I catch you alone for more than 30 minutes, I will force you to play a board game with me. But the way I would teach you to play this game is very, very simple. I start with explaining to you how to win. I explain to you the victory condition. Once you understand the victory condition, then you basically are able to figure out the rest of the rules as you go along. And I realized that I had figured out what my victory condition was. I knew that I had to get healthier. That was my start. in 2018, if I wanted to do the things I wanted to do, I've got a list of 100 things I want to achieve in my life. I've marked off about 23 of them so far. One of them I didn't think I'd get to was don't get on a plane for 90 days. Thanks, COVID. But I've got this list of things that I'm working through, and I knew that in order to do many of those things, I had to be healthy. So I decided on New Year's Day that I wanted to basically re-engage and to create a victory condition around health. That's where I set out to do. But I didn't want to bother doing with a New Year's resolution because I already had about 40 years of experience up to that point of failing at pretty much every single New Year's resolution I set out to make. So I thought, okay, there's got to be a better way to do this. Luckily, I have this kind of life philosophy, and my life philosophy is very simple. Failure is an attribute that is only awarded at death. Right? Like, oh, you're a failure. I'm not sure. I'll let you know when I'm dead. I'm also an atheist, so I don't give a shit, right? Like, when I'm dead, hairy bag of meat, I am done. So I'm okay being a failure after that happens. But up until then, no, that's not a thing I worry about. And I realize that's the same with kind of New Year's resolutions. Because your New Year's resolution is only payable on the 31st of December. You only decide if you fail to do what you set out to do in that year at the end of the year. So I realized, hey, I've got a whole year to do this thing. Now, I also know that on a games night, I would rather play 10 small games like Onitama than 2 big games like Twilight Struggle. So I realized that I enjoy many, many finite games. I want to play lots of games, 365 little games. So that's what I set out to do. And that's what I want to share with you in this talk, how I did this. But before I do that, I want to talk about this self-sabotaging asshole that is your brain. Because we set out with these great intentions, but unfortunately, inside our brain is an asshole boss, right? And it has different opinions on how we should be behaving. And we want to do one thing, but the asshole boss says we're doing something else, and that generally is what we end up doing. And I think we've got to figure out how to take control of this asshole boss and become the boss ourselves. Now, in order to do this, I'm going to share with you ideas from people much smarter than I am. I'm going to start with a guy called Jonathan Haidt, and he wrote a book that I'm actually reading at the moment called The Happiness Hypothesis. This is part of my early morning reading. If you haven't read it, that's a recommendation. Really enjoying it. Now, in this book, at the very beginning, and you can see from the picture in the book, he talks about this idea, and he wants to explain your brain to you. And he explains the brain in this way. He says your brain is like a rider on the back of an elephant. And the rider is your logical, intelligent brain. Your rider gets to control the elephant and tell it everything it's doing. Unfortunately, the elephant is your emotional brain. And it's fine listening to the rider until emotionally it decides that it wants to be doing something else, and in which case, the brain, its job is fundamentally changed. Then what your brain becomes, your rider becomes, is the lawyer, defending the choices that the elephant just made. I can see you're skeptical. If you don't believe me, the last thing you bought online that you totally felt you needed. For me, there's a stupid advert came up on Instagram for a thing called a One Piece, which is a onesie. I'm all for onesies, but this onesie was like the safari suit of onesies. It has shorts. Oh, I spat. At the front, they were like, oh, shit, die. It's okay. I'll step back and I won't get you so much in the next time. But I think I'm okay. So it has shorts and T-shirt arms. I bought this thing. I don't know if my wife is watching. I am sorry for how much I paid for this thing. It was in euros in my defense, and I didn't really think it through. And then I paid about $3,000 shipping, and then I paid import duties. And then it arrived, and I'm like, I can't wear this thing. It's so cold. Like, I'm sorry, love. I'm sorry. It's so cold. I put this thing on exactly once. But my rider justified my decision that it was on a summer sale, and that I really, really would use it a lot in our summer, so I was convinced it was a good decision. But I think there's a problem with this metaphor, and the problem is that I keep on seeing myself as a smart guy. I keep on seeing myself as the rider. I'm on the back of the elephant, and it's not me, it's the elephant. It's choosing where it wants to go. But that kind of lets me off the hook, and I don't think it should. So we've changed that narrative slightly in my head, and now what I do is I don't see it as a writer like me, I see it as a robot, like C-3PO in the back of Dumbo. And in my brain is C-3PO logically doing his best to tell us which way to go, and Dumbo just wants to take off and fly. And this lets me understand the stupid decisions I make in my life, which I make a lot of. Now, understanding that, I thought, well, how can I possibly control my elephant? What tools does C-3PO have to help with Dumbo? And I looked around and I only found one tool. And that tool, the carrot and the stick that he can wave ahead of Dumbo, is my willpower, which unfortunately is a diminishing resource. Right, so unfortunately, your willpower isn't as good at doing its job as you would think, because we were given it, we just weren't given a lot. In a study done years ago by Robert Baumeister, he brought in 67 students into a room. Similar to this, you guys here, brought you all in here, it was lovely. And he said to you, and as you walked in, you had this beautiful smell, a scent. And it was the scent of chocolate chip cookies. Just sitting there going, oh, they'd just been baked. Can you smell it? And everybody sat down there and they looked at these chocolate chip cookies, but they saw this bowl of radishes. And they were like, I don't know what's going on here. And what they said is, we need you guys to taste things. Everyone's like, I'm fine so far. I know what I'm going for. We want you to eat and tell us about the flavor profiles of what you're tasting. What does it feel like in your mouth? Crunch it to do it. And you're like, okay, well, I'll have one radish and I'll have, more cookies. And that was what they set out to do. And he said, unfortunately, this side of the room, I'm afraid you're not allowed any radishes. Right? You cannot have the radish. You're only allowed to eat the delicious, beautiful smelling chocolate chip cookies. You guys, sauce. You're not allowed any of the cookies, okay? You're just gonna eat the radishes. You're gonna sit there, radish, bite it, chew it, taste it, and you gotta write down the sensations you feel. So they did this for a while, and then what happened is at the end of it, they ended up finishing a little bit quicker than they expected. So the testers stood up and said, guys, listen, I know you've been paid to be here for a full hour, and we've only been about 30 minutes. If you would like to, we'll pay you double. One of our other research teams is doing a different social science experiment, and if any of you would like to, you can go through there, spend the half hour, and we'll pay you double. Of course, everyone's like, cool, sweet, I'm in, right? So you had the two groups. You had, of course, the cookie group, and you had the radish group, and off they decided to go next door. When they went next door, what they were given is they were given a test like this. And they were told that what they had to do is they had to draw, you know those tests where you have to draw the lines and you're not allowed to cross the lines and things like this? And they were given piles of paper. And they said, it's okay. You've got to just carry on doing this one attempt per page until you solve it. And if you can't solve it, it's okay. Just quit when you're done. Like if you get bored of it and you're over it, you can just stop and you can leave. Just bring us all the paper samples so we can see the methods you did. And so they sat down. And the results were interesting, as I'm sure you can imagine. You see, what happened there is that the group that had the chocolate chip cookies, they performed twice as well, twice as long than the radish group. Now, the caveat here, the interesting thing about the experiment is that there was no right answer. This was purely a test of willpower. It was simply to see how many attempts would you make. And the radish group made half as much. So what does this tell us? Well, it tells us two things. It tells us that our willpower has to apply to many different things at many different times. It's not like we have a willpower for chocolate chip cookies and a different willpower for tests and mathematics. It's that we have one pool of willpower, and if we use it all early in the day on one task, there isn't enough left later when dessert comes. And that's problematic. And the second thing we realize is that that tank, is finite. So essentially, for our analogy, what we're doing is we're giving a very, very small carrot to a very, very big elephant. And this is a problem. But I think we have to try to beat this and figure this out. And that's what I hope to help you with today. But first, in order to do that, I want to go to war with an idea that is being so glorified the world over, and I think it's got to stop. And that is habits. Screw them. Like, I really do believe habits are a terrible idea. We talk about you want to be healthier. Just have healthy habits. Thanks, Captain Obvious. Just need habits. Oh, shit. Okay. Thank you. Okay, brilliant. Habits are not easy. We've been lied to. We were told it takes 21 days to create a habit. But they've now done all of these tests like sciencey people do, and they know it can go up to like 250 days, but on average it takes 66 days to create a habit. Basically like the devil's number, right? Like 66 days, like we're close to the devil's number to do this. Now we do have some habits. I'll tell you some of the habits I have. Wiping my ass, thankfully, is a habit, right? That's a habit. Covering my nose when we sneeze, now, almost, habit. Putting on a seatbelt when you get in a car, habit. And for younger generations, not something you have never had to think about ever. But my parents, it took the inclusion of an alarm system being put in there, irritatingly beeping, until my dad was like, oh, this is some bullshit, plugging that thing in. Right? Habits are hard. They're not easy. It's not a thing we can do. So I think we can do, guys, can I ask you one wee favor? I think this is one ahead of that one, just for what it's worth, extra. So habits are hard. And I do think they're very, very hard. But I think if we can figure out, right, because I know it, because I cannot stop putting this stupid toilet seat down. And my wife always argues with me. And frankly, I think she's being a bit lazy because gravity is on her side, okay? It's not an effort for her. One down, and it's up. And it's also, by the way, how I know that toilets were invented by men, because if they were invented by women, they would have one of those fridge door, seatbelt, alarm systems on them if you leave it up. As far as I'm concerned, until you guys figure out to put the alarm on, gravity, bitch. Too much? I don't know. The world. Oh, I'm canceled. Sorry. I'll leave now. Anyway, so I think what we had to do is we got to figure out. What I realize is habits are not the victory, or they're not the path to victory. They're the victory condition itself. Once something is a habit, you've won. Doing habits isn't the easy bit. Doing habits is the win. So it's not enough to focus on how do I do a habit. We've got to actually get into the God particle that makes that up. And I think that's what I figured out, right? I don't believe that habits are the path to victory. I believe that they're the victory condition themselves. That's where we got to get to, is by realizing that, then we got to figure out what the God particle is. So what is the God particle of a habit? Luckily, I think I figured out that son of a bitch. And I'm going to share with you right now. Now, to do that, I want to ask you what these three people have in common. Jerry Seinfeld, Seth Godin, and Mike Winkelmann. Anybody? I'll tell you what these three have in common. One word: consistency. Right? Winkelmann, John mentioned him earlier, also known, this guy. Does everybody know who he is? His name, better known in today's world as Beeple. Beeple is a far cooler name for a dude who just made $67 million selling this thing here. Now this is his painting called Every Days, My First 5,000 Days. Note, he's letting you know that there's a sequel, so start saving. Right? For 5,000 days, he made a digital bit of art every single day. It went under the hammer at Christie's, and he sold that for $67 million. Is that right? Seth Godin, since 2002, has decided to write a blog post every single day, without fail. With his work days, he's written a blog post every single day. And this is the reason why he's considered to be one of the world's top thinkers. And then there's Jerry Seinfeld. When Jerry Seinfeld was asked recently what it is, his secret to his comedic success, he says it's relatively easy. All I do is I take a red marker, and every single day, when I read the joke for the day, when I write a new joke for the day, I go to the calendar and I mark off a big red cross. He said the success is not writing the joke, it's something else. What he sees as successful, and I think will be echoed by the likes of Seth Godin and Winkelmann, Beeple, is very, very simply this. He said success comes from not breaking the chain. Just don't break the chain. As long as you don't break the chain, you're in good shape. So what we now have is another tool. We have a chain that we can attach to the elephant that can help the robot control it. Unfortunately, as a vegan, didn't take me long to work that in. I can't go out there chaining elephants. So we have to rebrand the chain. And the way I want to rebrand the chain is this. I think what we need to do is create streaks. Now, streaks, interestingly, is the name of the book that I'm busy writing right now. Not the book that I'm trying to sell you on. That is the book I just finished 3 weeks ago called Here Be Dragons, out in November. You're welcome to do it. If you want to know about it, sign up to my mailing list. Link will be forthcoming. While you're there, subscribe to my YouTube channel. Don't know why I did that. No idea. Back to streaks. That will be coming out next year. You can buy that too, but I digress. I'm getting all distracted. Where was I? The elephant. Sorry. Back to me. So let's talk about streaks for a second here. I think streaks make things easy. Because you see, when you go on a streak, it's simply about building momentum. It's about finding momentum in your life of different things you want to do. And this is very different from habits. Because habits are hard to start, but easy to stop. Streaks are actually easy to start and hard to stop. And I'm going to explain to you why that is. And the other thing about streaks is interesting is it takes you 66 days to start a habit. How many days does it take you to start a streak? 1 or 2? Because the second day you've done something, but actually you're right, 1 day. The first day you do something, well, that's your first time. Then the second time, you're on a streak. And I try to bring streaks into my life every single day. On the 4th of January, I decided I want to do 21 pull-ups every day for 2021. I started 4 days late. As of this morning, I think I'm on, I don't know what you two did there. Let's pretend it started tomorrow because I'm going to ask you to do that later. We'll just lie about yesterday or practice. Okay, good. So I would put up challenge 21 push-ups every single day for the year. As of this morning, I think it was on 227 or something days. And here's the interesting thing. Tomorrow, it will be harder for me not to do 21 pull-ups than it would be for me to do them mentally. Because now, these 227 days have weight. They have gravitas. So I wanted to try different things and measure different streaks. I have a number of different ones going on. So every single work day, I walk 3 kilometers per day. I'm on day number 87 of that. I do 50 squats during my work day. So that's after training. I do 50 squats during my work day. I'm on 64 days with that. Reading a refined article. Every day I get a mail, and I'll share the link with you. It gives me 5 articles. I read at least 1 a day every morning before I start work. I'm on 65 days. My Kindle reading streak. Now, that's interesting. I'm on day 246 reading every day, but I'm on week 163. Kindle's genius because they give you a chance to fail, and I'm going to talk about that in a second. And then I review 5 of those Kindle highlights every single day, because we all make highlights in our Kindle, but we never visit them again. Using an app called Readwise, which I'll share the link with you, I review 5 of those every single day, and I'm on day 164. However, some of these lesser days, I actually think that the failure was not to do the work. The failure was to forget to log it in the app that I use to do it. And in order to maintain the streak, I want to share with you 4 ideas today. 4 very, very simple ideas: repetition, conservation, reparation, and absolution. And I want to share these ideas with you because I think they will help you maintain streaks in your life. And that is what my hope is that you start to do. So let's talk about the first one here, repetition. I think repetition is important. We love repetition in our life. Right? We love to have things. We want things to be musical. There was a lady called, when I was running the other day, I came out to Joburg 2 weeks ago, and I had a choice because I was in here all day with Mark over there. We were letting cars fly over us. It was a pretty cool day. And I had a choice that I could either break the streak of my running and start over again. I could get up at 3 a.m. and actually do my 3-kilometer run then, or I could actually just put it off on Saturday and let myself off the hook. And you see, what I'd done, because in the repetition, it's important that we have a cadence. And what I realized, I'd originally thought to set my cadence at 5 working days. But I realized my cadence was actually different. I zoomed out a little bit, and I realized, no, I just have to do 5 out of 7 days per week. And that let myself off the hook. And I believe that what we've got to do is try and create rhythm in our life, the right rhythms for these streaks that we want to do. What is the right rep count that we want to do to make them happen? Now, this lady here, her name is Diana Deutsch. She's an amazing thinker in terms of music and rhythm. And in her book, Musical Illusions and Paradoxes, she discovered something by accident. She discovered that when human beings hear a phrase that goes over and over again, hear a phrase that goes over and over again, hear a phrase that goes over and over again, hear a phrase that goes over and over again, hear a phrase that goes over and over again, it starts to sound like a song. It starts to sound like a song. It starts to sound like a song. And she realized that human beings want to find pattern and rhythm in everything. And it happens over and over again. If you want to see more about that, I highly recommend you check out Derek Thingamabob's. That's not going to help you. Derek Thompson's Talk at Google on his book, Hitmakers. Brilliant talk where he talks about this in detail. But I realized I just got to figure out what the rhythm is. And I realized that my life is a soundtrack. In the movie of my life, I get to be the composer. I get to create the beats. And the streaks are the beats. And I get to perform at them over and over again, all the time, any way that I want to, because it's my movie. The only change to this is when it's somebody else's tune. So if I'm doing Readwise and I break their streak, well, then that's their rules and that's okay. I learned about a company the other day called Streak Runners International. They have their rules, and if you want to join their community, well, then you got to follow by their rules. And if you break them, well, then that's something different. And this brings me then to the next part, which is conservation. How do we conserve it? Now, at Streak Runners International, they said that they've got 5,700 members, and their rule is very simple. You have to run 1 mile or 1.6 kilometers every calendar day. That's the rule. That's the way we're going to do it. So I heard about this because this friend of mine had posted that she'd done 500 days in a row. So I went onto the group to see, wow, that's a pretty long streak to run 1 mile every single day. And then I discovered this guy here, the record holder. His name is John Sutherland. He has run 1 mile a day for 19,078 days. That's 1 mile a day for 52 years. He has been running for every single day for 2 months longer than my parents have been married. My dad still thinks that John got off easy, right? So here's the thing, though. How hard would it be for him not to run tomorrow? What are the chances of it? It's almost zero. So I went onto their Facebook group and I asked them, hey guys, what have you ever done to maintain your streaks? And I got some cool answers. I want to share with you a few of them. I was admitted to hospital for 3 days. Luckily, I brought my running gear. I rode 0.8 miles around my bed until the nurse came in. I tried to explain. I said I can explain and finish my mile. This one, I gave birth to our 5th baby at home. A little while later, got up and ran a mile on my treadmill while my midwife and husband watched. This one, I discovered while traveling I forgot my running shoes, so I ran 2 miles in dress heels. I don't know why she didn't run barefoot. I don't think they have a shoe thing, but you ladies, okay. The next day, someone gave me flip-flops, so I ran in those much easier. Ran at 11 p.m. after 2 bottles of wine. It wasn't pretty. And then this one, I ran with a broken tailbone. I had to hold on to my butt, literally. I don't want to know what happened that he had to hold on to the butt. But here's the reason they had to do it. They had to do it because this streak had value for them and they didn't want to lose it. Loss aversion is a very real thing for humans. In a study done recently, they asked a bunch of workers, they said, I'll give you $12 if you maintain productivity till the end of the week. But then he went to a second group and he said, I'll give you $12 today, it's yours. You can pick it up at the end of the week, but you can only pick it up at the end of the week if you lose your productivity, you'll lose it. So it's already yours, but you'll lose it. Which group was more productive? The second group, because they didn't want to lose it, because they owned the money now. They were only going to collect it later on. Well, you own your streak. And this has been a superpower that I've had in my life. The next thing, and we're getting nearly there now, is that we have to get reparation. We have to be able to repair our streaks. Recently, when my Readwise streak broke, I was on 164 days. Well, now I'm on 164 days. I was in about 50. I logged in the morning and again the following night. They wanted me to have a 24-hour period within a 24-hour window, so they reset my streak back to 0. They said I'd skip the day. And the weird thing that happened was then I just quit. And I was like, okay, well, I didn't bother reading again the next day because I'd lost out again. Luckily, a few months later, they realized, well, they could fix this, and they came back in with a way that you can log back in and repair yourself later on, and you can begin again. And luckily for me, I realized that I wasn't doing the streaks for the sake of the streak itself. I was doing it to become better. So I did start again. I decided that was the thing. And I realized then that it's critical that I zoom out slightly and look at why I'm doing these things. Other organizations, Amazon, I've already mentioned them, weekly and daily. If you break it, you get it back. Snapchat, they send you a notification every single day. Hey, you run at risk of losing your streak. Don't do it. Kids jump onto their phones and they maintain it. And Duolingo, if you break your streak, you can pay cash money to get it back. They don't care. They just know it means something to you. So you'll spend $1 with them, say, okay, can I have my streak back? And like, sure you can. And you might say that this isn't a thing. I personally prefer the Readwise's approach because Readwise says if you do read and catch up on your reading within a 5-day period, you'll get your streak back. But I really applaud Duolingo as well, because all they realize is that the streak is in service of the victory condition. I want to apply this to my own business. I want to get my sales team. I realize that in sales, you measure what you sow, not what you reap. So I want to say to them, cool, I'm going to build streaks for every single day when you go out there and you send 5 emails. And if I can get them to send 5 emails a day and reward the streaks and keep those streaks from growing, I actually don't need to measure and monitor how many sales they make. I know those sales will happen. Right? Streaks can be powerful in all aspects of your business. If they fail, that's okay, provided we're willing to forgive them. And that's where the absolution comes in. So you need to realize this, as far as I'm concerned, is you are streaking to win. You are winning because you streak. You're not streaking to win. You're winning because you're on a streak. And if we realize that, we're in good shape. And this brings me back to January of 2018. January 2018, I realized that I just had to create a streak. My goal, I wanted to set up for myself a victory condition, and the victory condition was to be healthier than I've ever been before. That year, I managed to lose more than 20 kilograms. I was in great shape. I felt great. And the way that I want to share with you this codification of it is very, very simple. Step number 1 today is I want you to define your victory condition. What will make it successful? As I said, for me, it was this. Go out there running. Thereafter, all I want you to do is to go out there and every single day set 1 new day's resolution. It can be anything. It doesn't have to be the same thing consistently. It doesn't have to be a pull-up challenge every single day. It's just any one single thing that will get you to be healthier. And then each day, if you make it, you go back there and you log yourself with a win. And my rules are very, very simple for myself. If at the end of the week, right, when I get that win, I get my dopamine hit. If at the end of the week that I have 5 wins in a week, well, then that's great. Then my week is a victory. If I get 3 wins in a month, 3 weeks wins in a month, then my month is a victory. And if I get 11 wins in a year, then my year has been a victory. I have missed many, many days, a handful of weeks, 1 month, and no years since I started doing this thing. And that's why in closing, I want to challenge you to a very, very simple thing. The Suits and Streakers 66. The Suits and Streakers 66 is simply this. I don't care if you maintain a streak. I only ask you to set a new day's resolution for yourself every single day for the next 66 days. Every single day for the next 66 days, when you wake up in the morning, you're going to set a goal for yourself. It's irrelevant for me how many of those you get, although you're welcome to follow the same thing. But I believe if we can just start the habit of creating the first streak, we can go ahead and find a way to hack our brains, to feed that elephant, and to, for once and for all, win the war on willpower that each of us deserve to do. On this URL here, I've shared some videos for you, some resources and some apps that you can do to do it. And I've shared some of the sample New Day resolutions that I follow every single day. So ladies and gentlemen, I know I've overstayed my welcome, but I'm having a great time being up here with you, and I'm sucking in every single minute of it that I can get. I thank you very, very much for your attention, and I leave you with 2 words to walk away and to take away from with you today. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is to go out there and to start streaking. Thank you very, very much.
Come on, do you see what I'm talking about? Please give them both a round of applause. I think it's perfect that we leave it there. So I want to close off with you. I want to just give a few thanks. First, John and Rich, thank you. Thank you for being my brothers. Thank you for being mentors and teachers, and thanks for being compatriots in this whole weird, winging it, shitly game called life. Thank you both. You can clap for them. I want to say thank you to each and every one of you, you guys at home, for being patient with us, for you guys for being here. Thank you so much, really. Despite all the ups and downs, Rich, that really resonated with me for a million reasons. I cannot tell you how that's hit a spot. I wanted to say thank you to all the people who made this possible, and they are worth mentioning. First, I wanted to say thank you to Mitch. Thank you for making the effort that night to get hold of, to reply that night. It was 8 o'clock, you replied, you met me here the next morning, boom. To Leah and Cherie, thank you so much. It was It was a thing getting in here at first because this was a gym, and I get what they wanted to do. They wanted to have a space that added value. And in the end, I said, give us a go. We will add value to the people around us, and that is something we will do. So thank you for the gap. I want you to know that it isn't the Mark Sham show at the Tryst anymore. This happens a lot in the past. I started Suits and Sneakers. I've always been the person who brings this together. But it is no longer true, and I'm so proud of that. And so there is a team of people here. I want you to know that when you give any form of love to the Tryst, you're not doing it just to me. There are a whole bunch of people here. So, for example, Paseka up there, our videographer. You have people like our team. My uncle and I, Mike, Sham, and I have been up and down the windy road together. He's the last person I worked for. And wouldn't you know it, we're back here once again. And so I've got Mike and his team handling the admin of the venue because God knows that's not my forte. And it's working out just fine. So when you come here, you've got to understand that there's so many small businesses being involved. Mike and his team, Taki, Sue, Matt, up there. There's a whole team. I have to give you some love to Jason and Theo. These guys came and helped us from broadcast sales, put the cameras in, set up the studios. They're helping us tonight make sure that the streaming is going in. It's been crazy. To multimedia, we may have got off to the fumbling start, but these guys have helped us. The first event we ran here, Happiness, there's so much going on. It's such a team effort. I can't say thank you enough. Steph, the angel pie who came in and he helped us make this possible. It's a big deal because I don't know how we would have done it otherwise. There is two last people I want to say thank you to. The one, Armin Anders. Let me tell you, last year when I was in that deep, dark, ugly hole, it was those calls every night where I was like, I'm over it. It's like we always have this joke. Is the glass half full, half empty? And I used to say, fuck the glass. Fuck the whole glass. She'd be like, glass half full, Shambles, glass half full. And it's true. In the end, it turned out to be true. And last but not least, come join me here. I love you very much. Even though imagine we had 5 rand for every time someone said we were dating. Wouldn't we be rich?
Yeah.
This is my business partner. She does this thing where she doesn't like to be in the front all the time. And so it looks like it's a lot like me, but it's not. The reality is her company. The other reality is that if it wasn't for Nicola, this place just wouldn't work. So Nix, Mark, Matt, Sue, Des, Avril, Taki, there's so many people, Eddie, to all the people, Jason, Theo, everybody. It's such a solid team effort. To people like Sasfin who have been supporting us through the Small Business Showcase, to all our clients, there's so many of you. I want to say thank you. We've got a lot to learn in this game, but for all the mistakes we make, we always make it up because we're fucking sharp at what we do. We always want to be better than everybody else, but we love to collaborate, and the most important thing is we love to create value. That's our modus operandi at the Tryst. So I could go on and tell you about all the things that we do here. You'll figure it out because you'll be coming to more events. We'll just get better. We'll just get slicker. We'll just add more value. I love South Africa for all the ups and downs. It isn't perfect, but it's got us. And so for nothing else, I want to say thank you to each and every one of you, all of you who are here, and all of you watching at home, and anybody who watches this on YouTube. It's been a phenomenal night. We are indeed going to laugh about some of the hip-hops, but not before we go on holiday. So that's been a good evening. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being part of this. I hope you have a great night. For those of you channeling out, thank you for being part of this. The rest of us, let's go grab a beer. Thank you.
You're not playing the video.
I don't know if I've got it launched.
The story begins, like all the good stories of 2020, with just a simple, direct message. But this unsuspecting, sliding DM was more powerful than those before its time, and would soon gather momentum to create something magical.
You see, Nicola Fenn, a corporate marketing aficionado, was set the task of hosting hundreds of people during level 5 lockdown. But quick to recognize a trend, Nicola switched her strategy to digital, and she knew she needed a commanding, inspiring voice on the other end of her webinar.
As fate would have it, Mark Sham of Suits and Sneakers fame was in the process of pivoting too. While his live events were on pause, he was still bursting with passionate tips and tricks to navigate through this novel period in history.
And so, the stars aligned as one of the most fruitful DMs of all time read. We haven't met. I see you've just cancelled your show. We need your help. Would you be keen to come on board?
The rest is in the history books as we launched our webinar series, WTF, What's the Future? And it was a hit.
Global speakers united, registrations and attendees skyrocketed, and we just knew that we were onto something special.
Shortly after this series, I decided to go on my own and start a marketing agency.
As an entrepreneur, I know how difficult it is to start your own venture. So now with Nicola embarking on the daunting journey of starting The Reality Is, and myself pivoting Suits and Sneakers to meet the requirements of the new world, the Tryst was born. The Tryst is a space that sparks creative collaboration, and we host events that matter.
We offer marketing solutions to any company, no matter the size.
Welcome to the Tryst.